Welcome, Vivian. Over to you now. Welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for your time to attend our event, and it's great chance to know you. I'm Vivian Zhang from China. Now we are in Yunnan province, and we are harvesting our tea from mountains. Some of you also saw the names we know, and I feel so happy you may join this chapter too. So today we're going to introduce you about Chinese teas. I share the slides. So if you have any questions, please be patient. I will come to you at the end because we have a limited time. Usually we do 2 hours talk, and 1 hour is quite challenging for us. So I try. Okay, so just to have a quick look about agenda. So me and Lorenzo, we have a land in Yunnan. Actually, the word, if we say Eastern Leaves is our brand. Eastern Leaves owns 30 hectares of wild tea plantation. Own, I feel I don't like this word much because no one can own a wild forest, especially when we are back to Yunnan mountain again. Every time when we pass by the beautiful landscape, especially when we drive from down to high mountain, the altitude is about 1,800, because in Bama village, this is the highest and the top quality among other villages in Nano, because Nano mountain is a big name. So sometimes, especially when we are in the forest, we feel like incredible. Some trees are so ancient. Our life is so short. Who dare to say we own them? We are just a passenger for them, and we just say hello, and we want to keep the forest as natural as possible. And one day we die, and the forest is still there, and I will be so happy, because for us, I think for Chinese, we would think tea is a female, and for Italian language is a male. And I always feel like women is, is with this mother-like care and love, and the forest is definitely like a mother. And we every time visit the mountain, we are reporting her if we are doing well or not, if we are managing the land and the forest well or not. So for us, it's so meaningful. I super welcomed you to come to Yunnan one day when it's possible. I will introduce you a lot about the local culture, because Yunnan land is so special. So talk about tea. It's just such a big topic. So sometimes I also ask myself, what does tea mean? Every year I change. It's a really deep topic, but let's say it's a herb, it's a beverage, it's a tree, it's probably it's something to have a good benefit for the health. But just imagine what tea trees for us, or we imagine mostly like this, right? It's a kind of intensive tea trees. Let's say tea trees can be like this, and mostly in the world, tea trees are like this. But why we feel so charming? Because tea trees can be any kind of size and shape, and tea leaves color can be darker green, yellow green, or different shapes, and trees can have multiple shapes too. Just to take example, this is the wild tea trees we own on the left photo. So it's in the forest, and you should work a little bit, and then you can find one tree, and then you work a bit, you find another. Sometimes you even cannot find the tea trees. We didn't see our tea trees for more than 3.5 years because of virus. But once we came back, we feel so moved, just so moved, because we're so happy they are growing better. And after such a long time, we were surprised and so happy because they grow so healthy. And we also have more than 300 Asian tea trees. Maybe it's the first time for you to hear about it. Asian tea trees, what does it mean? It means the tea trees can be older than 100 years old. Of course, if you are expert about tea, you knew that Asian tea trees can be even more than 1,000 years old. So 100 years old is still like a baby. But tea trees, like we said, the shape can be like an umbrella, can be like more than 20 meters. So incredible. It's not just like all tea trees like this. We hope they can be like trimmed tidily, and when we pick up, it's easier. But in Yunnan case, Yunnan is the place to have a tea, to have tea trees. So it's a really special land. And also with the local culture, they have 13, in Xishuangbanna, there are 13 minorities. And in Yunnan province, 26 minorities, and each minority has their own clothes and language and culture. So here we are learning, like Tabia said, that she doesn't know tea much. I felt same. Even I'm dealing with tea and I'm managing tea and planting tea, work with the workers as a farmer, but still feel like I'm learning every day. But I'm happy. I have a chance. And I felt my choice was so great to inspire my life, and the rest of my life will definitely work in tea. So the tea trees in wild forest, let's say, occupies only 15% of the forests, and 85% are flowers or other trees or some strange trees and plants. I'm also learning what kind of plants and flowers unique, like chestnut and peach and wild peach and a lot of things I even don't know how to call them, and fan. I'm learning too. There is a professor from Beijing University also came to Menghai area, not say Xishuangbanna is too huge. In Mengla area or other areas, each mountain has their own butterflies or birds. So many things to study. Of course, the best is to have biology, food, complete biology. Now, let's say we don't need to worry if there are insects, insects eat the leaves, and because there is a bird and also other animals. So we don't need to manage the land too much. So I believe everyone here are interested in tea, right? You wouldn't spend time here for something you don't like. So probably you have your preference. You prefer black tea or green tea or others. But where's tea from? Now we agree it's from China, right? But let's say in the beginning, the legendly, we consider the first time people talk about tea from Shen. Maybe you heard about Shen. He is a kind of god. He has a cattle head with horns, so has horns and also a human body, but his stomach or belly is transparent. So he tastes a lot of herbs and plants, just want to make sure what is eatable and what's not, what is not, and give human, let's say, let's say, the notes to let human choose what is eatable. And one day he got poisoned by poison herbs, and his belly became black color. And then he just tried to eat everything, and he found that after eating tea leaves, the belly became transparent, clean again. So that moment, people says tea can help you to clean the poison from your body. And even now, we consider to drink tea is really great and it's healthy beverage, right? So there's a reason. This is the starting, but of course later proved a lot by hospitals and the professions and the lab in every country. For me, this is a beautiful story, and believe or not, okay, there is a reason, but one is the peak for tea culture. Of course, Chinese tea culture is really long, thousands time, and also the peak is in Tang Dynasty and Song Dynasty. We heard about it very well, right? So tea and tea wares are from there, from that moment. And also Japanese tea learned from this period, and Korean as well. But for us, the more important period of the dynasty is the Ming Dynasty. Why? Because from Ming Dynasty, we start to have loose leaves. Before Ming Dynasty, we had only compressed like a cake shape. Incredible, right? We're used to drink loose leaves right now, or maybe tea bags. Tea bags considered like loose leaves. But in the past, not too long, so before Ming Dynasty, the teas were all made cake shape. It's really trouble to brew tea or boil tea. So of course we have a saying, Tang Dynasty we boil tea, and Song Dynasty we how to say, like we beat like matcha right now. Nowadays, if you see matcha, it's from Chinese way, and then from Ming Dynasty is brew. So what changes? The biggest change is the tea category. So we know how to brew tea by parts or gaiwan nowadays. Some people call it a zhong, but the other thing is the technique to make tea. Sometimes we have been asked by tea people, drinkers, says, is it true you make tea from different tea trees? So white tea you got from white tea trees, and black tea from black tea trees. Okay, probably we have the correct information right now. Let's say, of course, the tea trees are same. Let's say generally they are same, and we can make different teas according to different techniques. So after Ming Dynasty, we have different techniques and we have different results. Who are they? The 6 categories: white, yellow, green, black, dark, and oolong. Oolong, if we call it color, can be qingcha. It's like a blue. So just because of the loose leaves, farmers could make the tea freely, and they created this tea by accident. And it's a beautiful accident. Okay, so which provinces produce tea? You can see here from, let's say, south of China, middle and south of China. It's a huge, and 19 provinces produce tea. The last part, I believe you also brew tea at home or with friends. Tea is definitely the best beverage we could have daily, also social life. Let's say Chinese, we say it's different ceremony from Japanese teas, but let's say we have a gaiwan or teapots. Everything is meaningful. Just to say the gaiwan, we use like this, and 3 pieces. This for Chinese we consider is like a sky, and the bottom is the earth, and in the middle is the natural. So tea, it means 人在草木间, human is between the sky and the earth, so also between the grass and the wood. what we need to drink, we need to drink the most natural thing. So this Gaiwan has the most natural thing, that is tea. And also, usually we use Gaiwan and then Gongdao Bei, fairness drug. Fairness drug, it means to be fair to everyone. So tea table, when we share a cup of tea, we drink same taste from the fairness drug. It doesn't matter you're man or woman or elder or younger, we are all same. If it's bitter, we suffer same. If sweet, we share the sweetness. So we are like together. And this tea drinking time is only one time and it's unique. I really like this Chinese concept. And the funny thing is, I have been asked often why Japanese tea ceremony is more popular than Chinese. And also Chinese brewing way is too complex. Seems like complex, right? But consider China is huge, and each province has their own culture, and they have their own teas, 6 categories teas, and they need to brew different ways. And of course, the Gongfu Cha can be multiple. And the point is, we like sharing tea. That's enough. Okay. Next part I give to Lorenzo. If you have any questions, I think we can have right now or later. Up to you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for being here. I see so many faces, or at least so many names we know, and I'm grateful to all of you and to know all of you. Thanks, Vivian, for this introduction. There are many parts that are very interesting to start from there. As a Westerner, because I'm European as well, a point that I find so charming is the Ming Dynasty part that Vivian mentioned. So when there was some freedom for the producer to produce different kind of teas, to experiment. Me, at least, when I started my journey into tea, I thought that tea was standardized, was these centuries, 1,000 years old tradition that was steady, frozen in time. Actually, it's not the case. And it's so interesting to see the evolution that nowadays continues season by season, I can guarantee. And also the same is for tea culture. Here we see in this slide the first commercial registers of when the Chinese tea went out of China. So we see, of course, Japan is the earliest. In Europe, we had Italy and Portugal, very, very early importers. And then England, that is interesting for us, is 1637, with actually a bit earlier development due to the royal house, but this is the commercial register. What happened that in 1650, UK had imported for the first time in just 10 years span, 3 food and beverages containing caffeine. And we mean coffee, tea, and chocolate. That was had a great impact on UK society. It was mostly unknown for European culture. That was based on different things, completely different things. Tea played, of course, a great role, even with a learning curve. Okay, the impact, the first part was on society, looking at the society, we had a health improvement. And this is kind of interesting, is often mentioned on Chinese sources, how for example, the mortality rate of infant improved so much, simply boiling water. Whoever of you has been to China knows that hot water is extremely important, is a daily thing. Not as much, it was not this much for Europe and UK as well. So this one looks like a small and simple thing, but is worthy to start with this part. In some way, coffee and then tea, they were also modern beverages. We think about some workers before they had beer break during the work. Is an alcohol-based break. Of course, having a caffeine-based drink helped much the work. We call them modern beverages because also we had the start of the Industrial Revolution. So to have a clear mind to work with machinery, but also to have a clear mind to be accountant in a more direct way, definitely improved the efficiency of things. We have places. The first big start was for coffee, definitely. At the end, I mean, between 1600 and 1700, it's said that there was one coffee house each 200 Londoners. That is a huge number, is definitely a huge number. Tea houses came a bit later at the beginning of 1700, also with different rules. They were important, coffee houses, let's say, at the beginning, and then tea houses, because they were social places where people could gather, could discuss, could exchange opinions. Like Lloyd of London was born in a coffee house, for example. Of course, as usual, the power didn't see these places in a very good way, but it was impossible to stop them. Interesting enough, in UK, the coffee houses, they were mostly forbidden to women, but tea houses were not. It was born, at least the first growth was due also to the women in UK. In tea houses, it was possible to drink tea, of course, there, but also to buy it and to brew it at home. A big difference between tea and coffee is also the brewing technique. That in the case of tea was and is until now, definitely, kind of easier compare coffee. So that was encouraged. At the same time, there was developing of a parallel market of teaware and accessories. Tea, since the beginning, became a social occasion. It means that the tea and teaware was useful for the brewing, for the preparation, but also for the social part of it. The very interesting part is that we have to imagine in that moment that it's definitely not like now, where so many people, they have access to Chinese courses and can speak Chinese. No mention before the pandemic, travel to China, that is a big spread in terms of culture. But let's consider that the first solid English-Chinese dictionary appeared in 1800. It means that tea in that moment, that time, arrived to Europe, arrived to England without instruction. There was no one that brought a way of using it. No one could speak the language almost. It was not a compana, it was not together with someone that teach people how to brew. Also, this tea often came after a very, very long travel. So the conditions of this tea were not really, let's say, far from perfect, often very bitter, not very well preserved. Thus, a huge consumption of sugar that is also due to the importer. Often the same company who imported tea was also had some conflict of interest with sugar canes. And then we have, of course, milk appeared a bit later, but not far from that. So we have the rising, it rises, we have the beverage, we need a culture to accompany it. And here start to have the UK tea culture that, of course, as we understand, is detached from the original production country. We often introduce a parallel with the coffee industry, not just because both beverages, they contain caffeine, as we mentioned, but these start to be a good reason. But we are more used to talk about it in a broadened and in Western terms. So a question that helps us to introduce the cultural part in tea consumption is try to think if the producing country is the same as the consuming country in the coffee industry or in the tea industry. Because this one brings us to the next question, that who determines the consumption standards? When we talk about coffee, for example, we have the production country that is often, if not always, if not at least most of the cases, a provider of raw material for other countries. The value in coffee is very often added by the roaster, the brewers, that is really far from the production country. I remember a very famous coffee roaster in Denmark that I follow, that are called Coffee Collective, and they tell a story. They've been to Kenya to source coffee, and they said that we were sourcing one of the most expensive coffee of the world, but the producer gave us tea, served in the English way. Why? Because of this reason, because like the coffee brewing culture is totally detached by the production side. So in some way, the country in which we roast the coffee and we consume it and we trade it is also the country who makes the culture. In tea, things are slightly different, if not completely different. We have at least two groups of production countries. The first one is the ancient countries. We can call them ancient countries: China, Japan, and Korea. In the Chinese case, we saw before with Vivian how old is the story with tea. And there are, of course, many good reasons to know that, to say that tea spread starting from here to Japan and Korea, where anyway, we have an incredibly rooted tea culture, completely different in each country. The main point is that in these countries, the production goes to satisfy the internal demand. It is said, and it's true for 99.9999% of the cases until now, that the best Chinese teas, they don't go out of China. They are demanded by Chinese tea drinkers, collectors, and passionate people. Only a pretty small share of the medium and high and premium quality goes abroad. The same is true for Korea, and in part with some changes also for Japan. So in these countries, we have a culture deeply rooted, layered, that really the culture of the brewing of how to consume tea goes together with tea itself, at least nowadays, but we will see later. Then we have some new countries, new producing countries like India, Sri Lanka, and Kenya, that they were born definitely as exporter, mostly exporter. So where we have China as a country that was direct to the internal consumption, we have other countries where the tea production was brought by third parties, third countries, or empires in a different part of the history, and the tea was grown to be exported. It happened that also these countries developed their own local culture in terms of tea. It's younger than the first group of countries, so it's still under development, and it's very interesting to observe. But the main difference, and it's incredibly important, is the one we mentioned about where is the part. then it's also very interesting, and I advise any one of you that is interesting to deepen the process in which all the countries they started to grow tea. For which reasons, especially in the case of India, that is particularly actual and interesting historical wise. This one brings us to talk about the supply chain. That on our terms, we imagine it as a mountain. We saw before with Vivian how tea is grown in altitude very often, and then goes to the final market that are for China. In our case, we produce in Southwest China, and our tea goes mostly to the Chinese East Coast, so to the big cities, and then of course goes to the West. So we have farmers, sorry. We have farmers at the top, and we have their first contact of farmers is with dealers. And we have different roles that brings tea and tea culture together to the final market. An important, extremely important thing that we noticed, at least me, I've learned, especially since my Chinese years, since the beginning, is how much culture and skills a dealer should have. And this is something we advise to, I don't know if any of you is already a passionate drinker and would like to start a career. Our first recommendation is to follow follow the traces of the best dealers. It means talk the language of the producer. It means talk the language, I mean the spoken one, but also the technical one. They go together. If there was a time where I remember my first years in China, it means 2007, 2008, there were so many young guys, me included, that we thought that just, okay, we study Chinese and we have something. It's totally, it's extremely important, the language, but it's not enough. It's the basic to start and to start to go and to add more and more technical skills. Because this is the gate. Language is the gate to culture, but they are both extremely important. We always we have at least very few roles in the supply chain. They're the basic ones, but also because as we see it is still more complex than the average. The communication we often have in Europe, at least I was talking with a university just a few weeks ago, and they say, well, I don't really recommend to our guys to work in tea because maybe the only career can be a shop ownership. When we see how complex it is to deal with such a culturally complex good as tea is. Things are definitely changing in Europe from the consumption way. Experience with the Chinese market, and we have some also with the European one and the US one. There are many things that are completely different from the past. If we have a history in Europe, still we're rooted of an easy, let's call it an easy import tea from let's say a new producing country, like can be the India or more recently Kenya and Africa. It means very high margin standardized tea without tea culture attached. Now people are completely changing. Maybe in the 50s we had really literally a handful of people able to speak Chinese. Now we have dozens of thousands only in Europe. There are so many young guys studying Chinese, and this is so beautiful, but also more adult people who has traveled to China, who is back, that are back. It means that the search and the quest for something that is perceived as authentic is growing and is much higher than before. It also means that the customer, they are not willing to accept a product that is detached from the original culture. And this is really fantastic in terms of our experience as producer. Really gives us a way of express ourselves in a great way. We can have, and we usually have, a really fantastic conversation. But it also means that if any of you wishes to become a tea professional, you cannot have anything less than this complexity. It's extremely important. Another, of course, more generic, in food and beverage industry, there is a growing awareness, generally talking, for the origin of tea. We call it the concept of terroir. From a French point of view, it means the mix of geography, of soil, of people, and history. It means nature and culture all together. And it also means that it's more and more important to talk about Chinese culture when we talk about Chinese tea. And also it's true, the opposite is true. There is also a lot of talk recently in the West about cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. It goes totally and completely in the same direction. We need to base the taste, to base the fragrance, to base the description of the technique, of the production technique, that is so interesting, but it also uses a mix of cultural terms. We often describe tea using our Chinese point of view. It means we often describe the body, for example, of the liquor using Chinese words, but also a Chinese way of tasting it. Whereas very often some European students, they ask us very typical wine words in terms of to describe a fragrance. We have learned to listen to the European jargon and to mix it with our Chinese one. My meaning is that the important part is being able to create a bridge. To do that, it's essential to know both cultures, the country of origin one and the country of destination. It's complex. It's definitely a complex work, but it's the only one that can work. So we also have a few more advices, always in terms of hopefully a career, or anyway, something that can make maybe interesting to follow and to better understand the industry. We said that the step of the tea supply chain are multiple. There is not only the shop. For example, I remember when we first started producing our teas, it was we started in 2014, and then we started, let's say, to hit the market with more consistent quantities in 2016 and 17. And it was really difficult, actually. It was impossible to find an agent in Europe just to distribute our Chinese teas. Because in that moment, but also now, is still pretty rare that tea is always is labeled and branded with the importer brand, not with the producers. Tea is often traded as a commodity, like if it's corn. It's not, you don't have, like in wine, a bottle label with the winery. But mostly a pack label with the importer or the distributor. And it made us think a lot because really, as Chinese producers, we really needed services. We needed someone to accompany us in a new market that is Europe or US, that is another completely different culture. But there was not this role, and we always wish that someone can start to develop this part, because there are so many producers, not just in China, in Japan and Korea, that really need to be taken by hand and helped to meet the Western culture. And this is just one example. Then there is the logistic. That is another incredibly delicate issue. Think about that most of the European countries' custom, they are completely new to tea. Also, the way to measure the chemicals into tea, they do not consider this, how specific the product is. There are some teas like our pu'er, they are produced using natural wood, fire. And this is something not admitted at least by European Union. It's kind of delicate and requires a very skilled importer. From our point of view, as we are, of course, we are a kind of a small company, we try to solve all these problems by ourselves, but it has not been that easy. It meant to open a branch company in Europe, which was Milan in that moment. But until now, in Europe, there is a huge lack of these professional figures, professional people, and we always willing to support whoever wish to build a career around it. We said it before, languages are the door to culture. Most of the people that were with us can speak Chinese. For us, is extremely important, at least in terms of curiosity. Even if traveling to China has been so difficult recently, but there will be a better day, there will be a different day, there will be a better future. And to communicate is extremely important, is really the gateway to culture. And as we said, it goes too close with the final product, that is tea. We said that tea is in continuous evolution. At the beginning, when we started, I remember that many questions, especially from Southern European countries, for some reasons, but probably because of the parallels with the wine industry. So we received a lot of questions like, what is the standard of this and that tea? Because people, of course, they are looking for, especially at the beginning of the evolution of a product, of a market, and high quality tea is really at the real beginning in Europe. There is a huge space and a blank page to be written. So I say at the beginning, people, they are looking for clear rules, clear lines. For us, it was difficult to reply, because we started 8 years ago, and our white tea, for example, evolved so much, not because of our technique, but because of the technique of all the producers in the mountain. Also our red tea, that is such an old recipe in terms of production, but has underwent major changes in its production and also in the final taste in just 8 years. It means continue to study, of course, drink a lot of tea, improve your palate, but continue to study, continue to improve yourself, continue to update yourself. When it will be possible, travel as much as you can in different regions, but also specialize in a single region and visit it often to see the small changes that occurs season after season, in terms of not just because of the weather, that is important, as a big impact, but also because of the production technique as they evolve. Farmers, they also travel, they receive opinion from the outside world. Is the same for us. As soon as we met the Western, as soon as we brought our teas to Europe, we also received a lot of input and we changed the way. It means that now we 40 people here, we are also making tea culture. Of course, tea culture, in our case, in our discussion, comes from China, but it's continuously evolving as much as tea techniques. We drinking tea together, talking about tea, and hopefully many of you will decide to start to try new teas or new beverages, a new way to brew, and they will bring something of their own self. And it will be fantastic, and it means as an improvement for all the industry and for the culture, and of course for the Chinese tea culture as well. Okay, our main presentation is finished, but as usual, as always, we always say that it's a conversation that started now, and we are available all the time. Any day you like, you can find us at this contact. If you wish to know more information about something we mentioned, or if maybe you want some advices on the next tea to drink or the next book to read, or maybe you are preparing a travel for a near future, we are here to support. Now Vivian is near me. I will also take another microphone, and we can reply to further questions.
Excellent, thank you, Lorenzo. That actually takes me to the first question that was submitted to us at the point of registration. I did give people an option to send us questions before, and Marco said that he's quite new to tea culture, and he finds it's quite a huge topic and overwhelming, not always knowing where to start his research. So he was just wondering if there is a worthy resource that you could maybe recommend where he could find some information about the tea culture in China.
Okay, it's very interesting, but not so easy. Let's say that also the literature about tea, technical is really at the very beginning. We would recommend are in a Chinese language. Sorry, can you hear me?
It's breaking up a little bit. I struggle to hear you. I'm not sure if that's the same for everybody.
Okay.
Perhaps you could just...
how is it going?
That's better, yes, yeah. But if there are any resources, maybe we can share them in my follow-up email to everybody. If you've got some links or some books that you would recommend, we can do that in writing. That might be easier. We have got some more questions in the chat. Peter is saying he likes Longjing. Perhaps it's easier for you to read it yourself, just so you know the pronunciation is right. And I'm not messing that up.
Okay, so Peter's question, Chinese tea like Longjing. Longjing is the most famous and important tea in China, which is from Zhejiang. And every year they have a fixed day to pick up. Like this year is 18th of March. So Real West Lake Xihu Longjing, it's officially by government announced which day to start to pick up, and also they have different levels. Yes, so if you want to have a good Longjing, I will send you email privately, and also other teas. I understand leaves are really, really charming. I often say that tea leaves are from Eastern, let's say from East. So we have a name Eastern leaves, and that's we decided the brand. But also, like Lorenzo said, the tea industry is continue changing and innovating. Just think about pu'er. You heard about the pu'er. Pu'er how long history does it have? We guess maybe thousands or at least some hundreds. Actually, modern pu'er tea world only lasted 20 years. Just so new. So we are trying to continue learning too. And the information is really, let's say, messy in China or Western countries, both. But we need to continue update us. So yes, we made this tea shop in Milan in 2016, and also same year we have a tea academy. So if you are interested about brewing, you also can text us, and other questions you can also find us. So other questions?
Crystal is asking.
Yunnan tea.
Yes. So why there's a particular tea known as Yunnan tea? Does that have to do with the tea plant variety or with the preparation of the leaves, or is it a combination of both?
Yes. Let's say both, of course, terroir and also cultivars, but mainly in Yunnan, they have bigger leaves. In China, we consider leaves are divided by small size or medium size and big size leaves, and in Yunnan, especially have a big or large. So that is richer in nutrition and the taste and others. So the famous pu'er is from Yunnan. And there is an official rule is only tea leaves from Yunnan and made according to the technique can be called pu'er. So if we make from Sichuan or other place, cannot be called pu'er tea. So Yunnan is really special. Okay, other questions?
Yes, do put them in the chat, or if you want to take the video off, you can ask them yourself if you'd like.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Jill.
Jill is sharing the link, yeah.
Yes.
We were talking about before when we said, oh, maybe it would be, if it would only had a little bit longer, we could maybe invite people to switch the camera on and brew some tea, and Lorenzo and Vivian could perhaps give some tips. So we do have a few minutes, so if anybody is prepared enough to make some tea to drink during the talk, then do switch your camera on and say hello.
Yes.
It's hard to put it all into 1 hour, I know, but yeah, I found it really interesting. You said it's the harvest time at the moment, Vivian, so I'd be interested, how does a day look like for you? What does harvesting tea look like for somebody who is a tea farmer?
Yes, this year a little bit cold, and everywhere, not only in Yunnan, also other provinces start to harvest tea later than usual. But then these days start to be warmer and immediately can start to pick up. In Yunnan, from today on, start to rain. So once it rains, the tea grows faster. So we also need to hurry up. Actually, the leaves are really important for Chinese, because as a human, we can make tea. Leaves have so many different tastes and fragrance. It's not common and not easy, because we're used to use fruit. We can make wine, but with grapes, or other tastes with rice wine and others. But only tea can use with leaves. To use leaves, there's convenience, which is we can continue to pick up and have bigger quantity, and like 4 seasons. So that's why we can drink a tea from Indian. They can get 4 seasons different teas. But in China, mainly, we only pick up a spring. So if we talk about harvest, spring tea is most valuable and also the busy time for farmers. Yes, thank you, Alan Brown. Yes, see you next time then. Marco, you talk about water, right? Water is really, really important. Why? Because when we brew tea, tea leaves occupies probably maybe less than 10%. Usually when we brew tea, let's say 1 gram of tea with 30 ml of water. So basically it's like a 30, a cup of tea, let's say maybe 100 ml, and the tea occupies about 3 grams. What we drink actually mostly water, mostly is water, and definitely it's so important, and we need to use soft water. How do we judge what is soft and hard water? If we use boiler, for example, this one, we continue boil many times, a long time, like 10 minutes, 20 minutes. We check if they are wet, stick inside of the boiler. If there are, it means it's hard. Hard water doesn't mean bad. We can drink definitely, just it's not suitable for brewing tea. So soft water is good for tea. Of course, if we talk about more detailed, what water exactly for tea and Asian tea and so on, it's a deep topic too.
So if you live in a region with hard water, is there a way of, making that suitable for brewing tea?
Yes, we also, let's say, even if we live in harder water areas, better we just buy bottled water. That's what we usually do. And we often check what mineral do this bottle have or others. And we compare different waters and temperature. Also, the boilers, this we call it maybe mouth of the boiler, how large, how long, and how thin, and so on. Everything matters. So water is just such a small one. Take example, in Ming Dynasty, they also consider snow is really good to boil for tea. So they collect snow and seal in a vase and put under the soil for years, and then you take it out when you use it. But the best, they also say, that is from flowers. So the snow on the flowers, collect that. That snow is better than any wood. If you want extreme, you can try.
Well, it certainly sounds like we could host a few talks on different aspects around tea, but sadly we are at the end of today's talk time. Like I said, I will send an email around to everybody who's registered with the recording of it, so you can watch it back. I'll also share a questionnaire, so if you've got any comments, any feedback, or any suggestions for future talks, we are always keen to hear those. And if Vivian and Lorenzo want to share any more resources, I will include that as well in that email. Thank you so much, Vivian and Lorenzo, for taking the time tonight. I know it's very early in the morning for you due to the time difference, so I'm sure everybody appreciates it as much as me that you stayed up this long for us to give the talk, especially during this busy harvesting season. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been really lovely meeting you and chatting, and looking at the comments. I think everybody is agreeing with me. It's been really fascinating and interesting topic to hear about. I wish you every success in your harvest this year, and let's hope that the times of the pandemic are soon overcome, so you can reach a little bit of a normality in that. Great. So thanks and have all a good evening. Goodbye.
Thank you. Have a good evening too. Hope to see you next time. Bye
Yes,
bye.
I hope everybody
Bye, thank
made
you.